Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about patios. We'd like to thank Kelly Roach for liking and sharing the podcast. In ancient Rome, patios were used inside and outside the house for entertaining, and they used stone and tile for their pavers. They've learned that if you made a really solid base, so if you built up underneath this a nice foundation of gravel and sand, that these patios would last a very long time.
Wonder how long that took to figure out.
And then they took that idea to making their roads. So around 250 BC, they had over 50,000 miles of roadways.
Wow.
And the building code at the time said that if you have a road traveling straight, it should be 8 feet wide. And when it starts to curve, it should be 16 feet wide. And many of the roadways were over 20 feet wide, so carts could pass each other.
Nice.
And what they found was a great foundation would allow these roads to be perfect for decades. They would dig it out, they'd put a layer of sand, then crushed rock over that, then gravel in cement, then another layer of sand, then gravel, and then cement, and they would put these large slabs that were graded, so then when it rained on it, the rainwater would drain into ditches that they created. So what a process!
Yeah.
And I guess these roads, some of these roads are still in existence.
Yeah.
So build a good foundation. If you're building a patio around your house, the most common material is stone, brick, or concrete.
So in this episode, we're just going to talk about pavers, right?
Okay. And with stone, you have flagstone, shale, slate, bluestone, limestone, all very popular. And usually if you're buying flagstone, which is popular, it comes irregular.
Right.
Or you can get it in pre-cut shapes. But if you're using irregular pieces, each shape is unique. So
they're different thicknesses.
Yeah, it's crazy. So there's no uniformity to the color.
It's like a puzzle.
Right, exactly. So when you're putting this together,
you're taking a labor-intensive project.
Yeah, and they're heavy.
Right, but you're making it more complicated because now you have to plan out where these things are going to go.
Yeah, but just think how proud you'd be once you're done. But you've got
you wouldn't want to put anything on it either, like furniture or anything.
Yeah, because you want to show off all the work. And with flagstone or natural stone, it's heavy, it's durable, and it's probably the most expensive. And there's a lot of natural flaws that can crack and flake over time, especially if you're in an area that freezes.
Right.
So you need to be aware of that. The pre-cut stone is much easier to work with, so you're creating very small joints in between each piece rather than the irregular shaped ones. And then with natural stone, it usually varies in the part of the country you're in because of the high cost of shipping. You're generally using local stone. So in Arizona, you can get stone that's red, that's blue, beige. In New York, Pennsylvania, blue stone is very popular. Minnesota, they have shades of yellow. And then in the Rocky Mountains, red.
Interesting.
Yeah. And with a regular flagstone, it's best to work with wide, sturdy furniture with legs that aren't going to get hung up in these wide joints and irregular thicknesses.
Well, because you have to cut the shapes to fit into the bigger joints, right?
You can, or you can just use all these large pieces and then put in small pieces of stone in between, almost like a cobblestone look.
Right. And so it's like a puzzle.
Right. With brick, traditionally the term brick means blocks made from clay. And brick making goes back to 5000 BC where they first started firing bricks. Before that they had mud bricks, and they just let it dry in the sun. But they started firing them and heating them for strength. And this clay comes in a wide variety of colors, usually in the red family. And you can get these smooth or textured. They're very long lasting. They really hold their color for a long time. They're less expensive than stone, and what's nice is, they're the brick shape. So they're small, they're uniform, so you can create really nice patterns and designs with your layout.
And it's easy to fit together.
Right, exactly. Yeah, light. And brick is porous, so it can retain water and crack. Again, if you're in an area that freezes, brick and stone, depending on the type, can be a problem. You can get frost-resistant brick if you really like that look of the clay brick. And then you also have to be aware, if you're building this in an area that's very shady, it can actually encourage moss growing on it, and it holds dirt and debris. So this is something that you need to be cleaning regularly if you're using a clay brick.
Interesting.
And then bricks with a real smooth surface can be slippery. And then concrete pavers are probably the most popular because they come in a wide variety of colors, of textures, shapes, and sizes. You can get curved pavers, which is really nice. And you can get them to look just like clay or stone. And the stone pavers, they actually have different heights, like on the surface, where it almost looks like they have ridges. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. You can even get them to look like wood. So like all the doors we talked about in the door episode, everything looks like wood.
Right.
You can get your pavers to look like wood. And they're relatively inexpensive. They're easy to lay because they are very uniform, where sometimes like brick pavers can have a little bit of variance because, when they cure them, when they dry them, they can have a little different shape. And most experts are suggesting concrete for homeowners that are doing their first patio installation because it's easier to do and it's very long lasting.
But you do need to be careful when you're shopping for these because a lot of them are just called bricks or pavers. You really need to look at the material that they're made with.
Well, what's funny is not only do you need to do a little research and find out what the material is, but even when you're buying concrete pavers, the materials vary. So I spoke to Randy from True Value by Ideal, and he's in Waltham, Massachusetts, and they manufacture their own concrete pavers. And he said that every company has their own concrete formula. So it really varies, and it varies by the part of the country you're in. And it's important that you know because some of them don't stand up to the freeze-thaw cycle that well, so you need to look at customer feedback. He also had a couple of tips. One thing he said was a sealer will help protect against acid rain, ice melt, the freeze-thaw cycle, dirt, stains, and these sealers will actually extend the life of your pavers.
Oh, cool.
The one product he recommended was SRW products, and they have a variety of sealers he said were rated very high. Before you start a project, take the time to create an outline and use either a garden hose or a rope to lay out the size. And then he said the one mistake that a lot of his customers make is they don't think about adding chairs and grills, flower pots, tables, coolers. So a party, what's happening with your party?
Right, yeah.
And he said you can't imagine how many customers come back and say, you know what, I need to double the size of this patio I just created.
Right.
So he said, a lot of his customers will say, hey, we just had a party and nobody could move their chairs back because they'd fall into the lawn. So size is important. He said that he built a patio in his backyard. It's 22 feet by 48 feet.
Wow.
And he said it's really nice.
Yeah. Not much to mow either, huh?
right, helps her. In New England, he said that from their research, for every $1 spent on a paver patio, you get a return of $1.60 to $2.50 when you resell your home. And for the average homeowner, this is a reasonably easy project, and you're going to get great results rather than trying to construct a wood deck.
Well, going through the learning curve of building a wood deck.
Right. And then you're worried about wood rotting.
Right.
Where concrete pavers, I mean, it's going to be down for decades.
Where I think if you're going to sell your house, this is something that a buyer would be looking at. Is your landscaping nice? Do you have a fence up? Do you have a patio? Do you have a deck?
Yeah.
Because those are big projects that a buyer isn't going to want to do.
Right. And you can now you've got extra living space to entertain. Yeah, it's great. I think it has a lot of value. When you're picking your paver shape, the most common is square, round, rectangle, and hexagon. And with the square, 8-inch by 8-inch is pretty common. Round, you've got an 8-inch round. Rectangle, so the most common brick size is 4-inch by 8-inch. And then they have bigger slabs, so you can get 10 by 7, 18 by 18, 12 by 24, and 24 by 24. And it's funny, when I was talking to Randy, he was saying that the bigger pavers are becoming more popular because there's just less to put down. If you're working with brick-shaped pavers, which are very popular, there's a lot of different patterns. The running bond pattern is very popular.
Are you going to explain what that is?
And that's where you have, let's say we're calling them bricks. And concrete's probably your best and most popular.
Okay, you have a rectangle.
Yes, you have a rectangle, and then you're going to lay the next one to it halfway up the other brick. And then, so your seams are never next to each other.
Right.
So you almost have them, staggered like this. And then with these, you're going to get blocks that are half the size, so small squares. So when you get to an end, you have, half a brick space there.
Right.
And rather than having to cut each brick in half, then what you would do?
Which would be a drag.
Yeah, man. So you're just going to buy these little squares that they sell, and then
smart.
all around the border, you're going to piece that in. So that's really popular. The basket weave. So you're laying two bricks next to each other, and then perpendicular to that, you're going to put two bricks next to each other, and then you're going to keep offsetting this so you get this basket weave look. And very easy, like if you have a square or a rectangular patio to create, and then the herringbone shape is very popular, so you have one brick and then laying 90 to that, you lay the other brick, and you're almost creating like a V or an L shape, and you're stacking those on top of each other. So, and go online. It is just amazing, and search for paver block patterns, and it's pretty amazing. In Europe, they really like the fan pattern, so you have specially shaped pavers, and it creates these fan shapes, and it's amazing. You can add borders with different colors. You can add curving shapes through your design, so you can use small squares and rectangulars together to give it a really nice design. So you can do a lot of very interesting things.
Just depends on how much work you want to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the whole key to having a paver patio is having a solid base. You need to dig down, and you're going to create this base so that these bricks don't move, or pavers, whatever your shape is. You want to have 4 to 6 inches of paver base. So this is crushed gravel or stone, and this is designed to compact, and it's going to support the pavers and allow water to drain through.
So it's not like you're just throwing these on your lawn.
No, you're doing a lot of work. In fact, you're digging and doing a lot of work, but you are going to create something that is going to stay in place. It's like I said, it's not going to rot like wood. You don't have to have the technical stuff that you're doing with wood.
Right.
So it really ends up...
It's just digging.
It's just a lot of digging, man, and dragging this stuff smooth. Most pros are recommending that you have 6 inches of paver base, so this is this crushed stone, and then you want to extend 6 inches beyond where you want your patio, because you need your edge restraint. So we're going to have something that's holding all around the edges of our pavers to keep them from spreading out. And so an edge restraint, a border, and so you want to dig and create your area and then go at least 6 inches wider, and you're filling that with a paver base and sand, and that's going to keep this edge restraint in place.
So how deep are you actually digging?
So you need to know the depth, the thickness of your paver. So let's say it's 2 1/4 or 2 3/8, and then you need an inch worth of sand, and then you should have 4 to 6 inches. Most pros are recommending 6 inches.
Wow.
Depending on the part of the country you're in.
This is a big hole.
Yes. So you're doing a lot in the wheelbarrow episode. Wheelbarrow, very handy for this.
What do you do with all this dirt then?
Yeah, you need to find a place for it.
So like you put it on your driveway? Or you just make a pile? Well, actually, I did some research on this, and...
Because I'm at a loss.
Right. Well, some people are just stupid. Like they said, take a cup at a time and throw it down your toilet. It's like, so that'll only take you the rest of life, and I'm sure that's really great for anything. Or they said go to a lake and dump it in the lake. I'm like, I don't think so. But there's actually Junk Kings.
Okay.
They are a company that you could pay that'll come and take away all this kind of waste.
Yeah, excellent.
They said maybe talk to your local landscaping companies that they'll know where to put it.
Ah, great. Yeah, great source.
Pool companies, they know how to get rid of soil or dirt.
Yeah, so they'll know a source where to take it. Yeah,
or they
excellent.
said take an ad out on Craigslist and put free dirt.
Really?
And
really interesting.
Talk to your neighbors,
because
a lot of
inches
people
that's good soil.
Right,
especially if you're building a...
Well, they said talk to your neighbors. There's a lot of people that need stuff.
Smart.
So I answered my own question.
Thank you. So when you dig your hole, so you've got your 6 inches for your paver base, your 1 inch for your sand, and then the thickness of your paver, you're going to put stakes and use strings, and you want to slope. So you need to know, and then also when we're figuring out our depth, we need to know if we're coming out of our house or off of a walkway, we need to know the height of that first paver, and then we want to slope away from the house. And most definitely slope. So most pros recommend 1/8 of an inch per foot away from your home, and you're going to use stakes at the corners at the height that you're going to mark. And so you can do it a couple different ways. One is you can first get your paver base, and you're going to set a string at that height. So let's say 6 inches up from the bottom of your hole, and you're going to go from the highest point, and you're going to grade down 1/8 of an inch per foot. And then you're going to grade your paver base.
Right.
And then you can set a string at a height for your sand, and you want that to grade away also.
Wow.
which is very important.
This would be critical.
Yeah. And then before you dig, another critical thing is call 811.
Right.
So whenever, you're digging around your house, you need to make
8 inches.
Yeah, you need to make sure that you're not hitting any utility lines. Mm-hmm. You should call at least 3 days before your project, and it's much better to call way ahead of time.
Right.
So most communities actually want the patios 18 to 24 inches away from any underground gas or electric or water. And so, if you're planning, like, hey, what size do we want?
Right.
It probably makes sense to call 811 and have them mark if there's any problems.
Right, before you even start.
Right, because then your design will have to incorporate that. I would also check the local village for any permits or restrictions before you purchase all your materials. Also, you can ask the building department.
And if it's okay if you have a big pile of dirt.
Yeah. And then I would ask also the building inspector, what's the suggested depth of paver base in your area? Mm-hmm. Because depending on sand or clay, sometimes it can be a little less. When you're digging your hole, you want a really good shovel. So,
maybe several. Get a couple buddies to come over and help you.
So a couple of highly rated. One was Earth Talon, and we saw this at the hardware show. And this has a narrow point. So this is going to get into soil easier. It's hardened steel. It has a large step on the shovel itself. So when you're jamming this into the soil, and if you have any small stones or any debris from when they constructed the house, this is going to push itself around that. It does a nice job. And then the Razorback 49-inch fiberglass digging shovel was rated very high, and this has a heavy gauge tempered steel and a large step to help force it into the soil. Once you have your area dug out, and now you're going to start putting down your 6 inches of paver base, and you want to do this 2 inches at a time, and then you want to start using a tamper and compacting it. So you can get a hand compactor if you're doing a small area. If you're doing a large area, you're probably going to want to rent a plate compactor.
Right.
And, this will really make it solid. And they run you, maybe $70 a day. And this is also what you're going to use if you have a large area on top of your pavers, and it's going to lock it all in place.
Interesting.
These plate compactors are loud, over 100 decibels, so you make sure you grab some hearing protection, goggles, gloves. A lot of people are recommending anti-vibration gloves, and then a dust mask when you're working with it.
Wow, this is quite a project.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you're set, 20, 30 years. You're set.
Yeah, but this isn't something you're doing in a weekend?
It depends on how.
Well, if you're going to the store, buying it, getting it delivered.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Digging a hole, a big hole.
Done in phases. And think about the weather. You can't be digging this hole if you've got rain in the forecast. I mean, you need to get this done.
Because now you have a swimming pool.
Once you have your paver base in place, it's compacted, it's sloped away from the house, you're going to use 2 10-foot sticks of electrical conduit. So buy 1-inch electrical conduit. You're going to buy 2 of them, and you're going to lay this over the top of the paver base. And now you're going to pour coarse sand over the area, and you're going to use a 2x4 that's wider than the width that you laid these 2 pipes, and you're going to pull over the top of the electrical conduit. So you're using the top edge of that conduit, and that's going to be your guide so that you screed this perfectly. So you're going to use this and pull your sand perfect. Once you do that area, you're going to pull out your pipes, and now you're going to need, a little pail of sand, and you need to fill that void.
Right.
And then use either a trowel. So you're going to work in an area that you can reach, and use either a trowel or you can use a garden spade with a flat edge to it, and you need to pull that perfect, because we need the sand to be, as close to perfect as we can get it, because this is what we're going to be laying our pavers on. Once you have your sand down, now you're going to put your border control down. Some pros like to do 2 sides and start there and work toward the open end.
I guess I'm not clear about the border control.
So you can either use metal or plastic or even timbers. A lot of people use 4x4s or 6x6s, but most people like the plastic border control. So it's a frame that's almost L-shaped, and you run spikes through this, and so this sets tight up against the edge of your of the sides of your pavers, and so they won't spread over time. Especially that first year is important. And now it ties everything together. So you have a frame.
So you don't see this.
No, it's just short of the height of the pavers, and then usually your grass will grow up to it, or sometimes people put something decorative, maybe some mulch around it. But yes, it's fairly invisible. Now that you're ready to start laying your pavers, you want to start at a corner and you're going to start working out and down. You're placing the pavers straight down onto the sand. You don't want to drag them, and then you don't want to stand on the sand. And most pros don't recommend tamping down the sand, so you want to screed it, and then as you're placing this, the sand will kind of puff up in between the joints, and it's going to help hold them together. You want to use a rubber mallet, and you're leveling the pavers as you work. And then have a pail of sand for helping level it. You can also use a trowel to smooth the sand. So let's say you set a paver and you didn't like the way it looks. You pull it straight up. You can put a little bit of sand in there, use a trowel, even it off, and then you're using your mallet, a rubber mallet, and you're getting them all straight. You're getting them tight next to each other, and then when you've got everything laid, you're slowly working across on top of your tiles, and then at the end, if you didn't put a border control on the opposite side, now you get that tight against the pavers and pound it into the ground.
So you're not worried about them moving when you're standing on them?
No, it's going to stay in place.
Okay.
When you worked on your design, if you have a design that ends with odd shapes, or if you have, let's say, a fan shape where you need to cut some, now once you've set all your solid tile, you can put in your half bricks. Let's say that you've created that staggered style. So now you're going to put the other pieces, or you're going to cut them, and you can either use a hammer and a chisel. So you'd use a concrete chisel and a concrete hammer. Make sure you're wearing goggles. Or you can rent a wet saw with a masonry blade, which does a fantastic job.
Or a little faster too, huh?
Yeah, they're great. Or you can get a power splitter. So sometimes they call it a guillotine, which is pretty cool. You know much about the guillotine?
I have a feeling we're all going to learn a little bit more.
So it's named after a French doctor, Joseph Guillotine.
And he's happy about that.
He came up with it. Oh, he hated it. What's wild is because he hated corporal punishment and he hated the suffering. So when they were executing people, they were using axes and swords. They were hanging people, and I guess it was just brutal because they weren't really good at it.
Well, being burned at the stake doesn't sound too good either.
Yeah, just amazing. And so he thought this would be a very humane way.
Yeah, just chop off their heads quickly.
Well, yeah, in his mind this was really good, but he did not want it named after him. And so they started calling it the guillotine, and he was really angry, and he actually petitioned France to say, hey, stop calling it this.
That didn't work out.
You know, public beheadings continued in France up to 1939.
Wow.
And the last execution by guillotine was in 1977.
Wow.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah. Are you going to teach us more about the French Revolution, or are we going to get back to patios?
Whatever topic you want me to handle.
I would like to talk about patios.
Once you have all your pavers in place, you want to sweep in a fine-grained sand into the joints, and you can use something called Paver Sand or something that's fine-grained. It's going to compact, it's going to keep everything from moving, and you want to make sure that you're spending plenty of time sweeping this over and over so it really works down into it. If you rented a plate compactor, now you would go over the tops of the tiles and work this in and then put sand back over it and keep brushing it in. You can also get a polymeric sand, and this is a sand with polymers that harden up and seal the joints when they're exposed to water. So the pros of a polymeric sand is it keeps the sand in place during heavy rains, it doesn't allow weed seeds to get into it, and it prevents ants from getting into these joints and creating colonies, which can cause problems, which is pretty interesting. Some of the problems with the polymeric is they can stain some pavers. Depends on the style of your polymeric sand. And then if it's not fully worked into the joints, if it's just riding on the top, after time they can actually pop out. So you've got sections that'll pop out.
That's a bummer.
You know, an interesting thing I found when I was doing a little research on the Paver Base is something called Gator Base, and it's GATORBASE. And these are interlocking panels that take the place of your Paver Base. So you're, instead of digging down that 6 inches, so this is interesting. So you're going to add up an inch worth of sand. These gator bases, so these panels are 3/4 of an inch thick, and then whatever the depth of your pavers are, so let's say they're 2 1/4, 2 3/8, you add that up, you dig this out, you grade the soil away from your house, you put your sand down, and then you lay these panels of gator base over your sand, and they're interlocking, and so you don't have to dig down that extra 6 inches, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I've never seen it used, but very interesting looking. And then you can walk on this while you're setting your pavers.
Oh, smart.
So it really looks cool. So it's worth looking into.
Sounds a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it looks very cool, and I guess it really disperses a lot of weight too.
Now that your patio is finally done, and you put in all this work into it, do you have any tips on how to keep it clean?
So if you're using stone, say flagstone, hosing it off and scrubbing it with a bucket with a little bit of Dawn. Most of the pros really like the Dawn or some mild dishwashing detergent. Use a deck brush. And the routine of keeping your pavers clean, all the pros were saying, you should have some type of monthly or at least a couple of times a season of washing them. Pressure washers were rated very high. They say this is kind of a must. If you have large patios, a pressure washer will do a nice job. And either just an inexpensive electric one, up to a nice gas one. Some of the top rated, and we've talked about these before, Sun Joe, Karcher, Power Horse, Generic, Generac, and then Campbell Hausfeld. So it's the Hausfeld is Hausfeld. They were all rated very high. You want to stay away from acids and caustic cleaners because it can discolor the surface on some concrete and some stone, depending on it. And
I would say just in general you want to stay away from acids and caustic cleaners.
Why even use them? And like with limestone, you can dissolve it with acids. There's a couple of very highly rated cleaners. Scott's Outdoor Cleaner with OxyClean. So it's an oxygen bleach, which is not really bleach. It's actually hydrogen peroxide and washing soda. And this is good for moss, mold, mildew, and dirt. Patio Magic kills mold, moss, and algae. The main ingredient is benzalkonium chloride, which is what you use to treat minor cuts and scrapes. And then like with the Scott's, the OxyClean, is the main ingredient is hydrogen peroxide in it, for cuts and scrapes. Weird, isn't it?
Yes.
And then another top product is Wet and Forget. And this is safe on all surfaces. There's no scrubbing. There's no rinsing. You just spray it on, and then over time with rain and with wind, it pulls off algae, mold, mildew, and that's always been rated very high. I would say after you put it down, depending on the type of paver, and you need to look at it, and you need to look at the sealers. Some recommend you wait a year before you put a sealer on.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought it would be right away.
Yeah, it is interesting. So get a good sealer. Make sure you look at the instructions when you should apply it. Some of the top-rated companies were Eagle, Sealcrete, and SRW. And Sealcrete is SEAL-KRETE.
Do you have anything else to add?
The key is build a great foundation.
Well, I would say the key is planning. Planning to make sure the weather's okay, what you're going to buy, get your friends all in order.
Yeah, there's a lot of planning. And then make sure you're compressing that paver base if you're using it. That's kind of key also. Slope it away from the house. Use a real good
That's another big one.
Border control is essential, and bigger is better.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, the Spotify mobile app, and the Google Play Music mobile app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And subscribe to that as well.
You can download our book, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.